Hey guys, how are y'all doing today? My name is Franchise Fanatic and welcome back to Star Wars Month. And today for you guys I have another Star Wars movie review. We already did a bunch of them. We did Phantom Menace, Attack of the Clones, Revenge of the Sith, the Clone Wars movie, and Solo, A Star Wars Story. So the next in the, not necessarily the way they were released, but the way you're supposed to watch them, I believe, one through, whatever, is of course Rogue One, A Star Wars Story. Now, this is the first Disney Star Wars spin-off that we ever got. Of course, Solo was the first one I reviewed because that's what technically comes first in the timeline, but this came after, basically it was The Force Awakens, Rogue One, Last Jedi, Solo, and now, of course, The Rise of Skywalker. But this movie essentially, and as I said here on my list, it tells the story about how George Lucas effed up, and that's basically it. This entire movie is about how these people on the ship called Rogue One get the Death Star plans. And essentially, because I watched New Hope as well, I watched this and New Hope on the same day, and my New Hope review is coming out soon. However, I watched that one, and I'll touch upon it when I review New Hope, but I was like, that is a really bad plot device. How George is like, oh yeah, it's just, shoot it one time and the whole thing explodes. That is very, very, very lazy. And they don't explain it. It's just, oh, there's a flaw, and that's it. But this movie explains the flaw and how it happens. So now it's not lazy. But if you just watch episode 4 as it is very lazy, but this is, of course, explaining it in a really great way. So, of course, let's see here. Back to this, we have the connections to the canon. Of course, if you played Star Wars Jedi Fallen Order, Saw Gerrera is in that game, and, of course, he's not as jacked up as he is in this one. So, Jedi Fallen Order takes place, I believe, 5 years or 3 years after Revenge of the Sith. This is, of course, a little bit after all that. Of course, after the Clone Wars and all that stuff. So, this movie literally takes place... when Rogue One ends, about maybe 4 seconds afterwards, A New Hope starts. So it is very, very close to A New Hope. In fact, like I said, it's basically seconds away from that movie starting. Of course, we have the acting going on to some good and some bad at the same time. I do think the only bad actor would be Saw Gerrera in one scene, and this is really my only negative about Rogue One, A Star Wars Story. And it's just me kind of, nitpicking, but it's when Jedha is exploding, and, they use Krennic uses the Death Star on it, and they all blow up, and they're kind of like, oh, we gotta go, and they all kind of rush on the ship, and Saw Gerrera's like, no, I'm done running, I'm gonna stay here, and he dies. Great scene, but the way the camera is, positioned, and the way Saw Gerrera talks, he goes, go, like that, he's like, go, like, really weird and kind of strange. It's really corny and cheesy, and I actually did cringe. And there's really not much of Star Wars Disney Star Wars that I do cringe at, but that was one of them. But that's really the only negative. As far as acting, like I said, it's all great. I think everyone who is in this movie, Jin and Chirrut Imwe and K2SO, Director Krennic, Bodhi Rook. I'm trying to remember these guys. The guy right there with the red thing, and he has the huge cool gun. I don't know his name. And that is another negative, which I'll get to in a minute, but I think every actor in this movie, and actress junior, so they all do a really good job of, portraying who they're supposed to portray. Of course, the editing, I really don't have an issue with the editing. There's really no scenes that end too abruptly. There really isn't, any strange sound delays or sound overlays or anything like that. I do think the editing in this movie is fine. I didn't notice anything. If you did, that's fine. To me, I think... the editing in this movie was fine. Like I said, some of them, if you watch my previous movie reviews for the other prequels and the Clone Wars film and all that, and Solo, I have a problem with the editing in some of those movies, and again, I'm not going to talk about it because you can go ahead and watch that video if you haven't, but it is kind of, about that. And I do think the editing in Rogue One is fine, for the most part. There's nothing that stood out to me as being bad. The directing, of course, who the hell is this guy? I was right, Gareth Edwards. He did a great job directing. I think every single shot, except for that Saw Gerrera go shot, I do think they were all really well shot and well choreographed, all the action scenes and everything like that. I really do think that this movie was very well shot for being a Star Wars war movie, and it's kind of hard for me to say that because war movies are realistic and bloody and gruesome and pretty effed up, and, that's what war is in real life, but this movie... It's called Star Wars, and yes, there is a war among the stars in this film. There's a big, aerial dogfights. But a lot of the combat in this movie is fist fighting, or like Chirrut Imwe with his badass staff, and he's, breaking stormtroopers and smacking things. It's kind of cool. There is a certain element of a lot of gunfight too, and that's what's really cool. Using these blasters and these different assault rifles and sniper rifles and all these configurations. It really is cool to see that it is warfare, and we've seen, of course, gunfighting in Star Wars before, but to have a whole movie, and especially this big third act on Scarif, really does make sure it really looks cool, and it's all shot extremely well. The writing, I have no problem with the writing. There was not one line except for "go," where that "go" line is kind of in every single freaking category. But I do think that the writing in this movie is fine. There's not one line that made me cringe. A lot of people say that Chirrut Îmwe and his gun buddy, they're kind of weird. And by weird, they mean like kind of cliche and corny. I don't think so, really. I think that Chirrut Îmwe and his gun buddy are really, I can't remember his name, are really, they're a good pair. He's always like, oh, I don't need luck, I have you. And you can tell they're good friends. And trust me, when stuff hits the fan and they start dying, it's pretty jacked up, Let's see here. The sound, of course, the gunfighting and the blaster sounds and the trees falling over in Scarif and, the K2SO, the robotic sounds and the ship. When ships take off and land, everything is so great. And now that Disney, this is Disney's second Star Wars film, and I think they're killing it, And of course, this is the second Star Wars film in my review. Solo was the first one, but realistically, Rogue One was the second Disney film that was made. And coming after The Force Awakens, I think they did a great job. Going back and telling a story about a guy, George Lucas, who told a very bad story and very, lazy story, but blow it up, it explodes, cool. This movie really, it's kind of a lazy plot when you think about it. It's just a bunch of people finding the Death Star plans, and that's it. And really, Gareth Edwards is telling the story about how George Lucas failed in A New Hope to tell that story. And essentially, he does it in a great way. And, it doesn't, when you're watching it, you don't get bored because, they're just trying to steal plans. And it lines up perfectly with A New Hope. And, of course, you see it with the Darth Vader scene, which we'll talk about, and Leia and all that. But, like I said, the sound going into that, it works really well. And, of course, all that stuff going into it. I think Disney's doing a great job with the sound. Of course, a few of the older movies, like I said, it was a little bit weird, but still, it's great now. The CGI, this is a big one. So, we have the blasters, we have the, the normal CGI, and it all looks great, right? The CGI in this movie is freaking awesome. It looks amazing. There's no complaints. It just looks fantastic. However, the abnormal CGI, which of course be General Moff Tarkin and Leia. So these are the two biggies, right? Tarkin was a huge visual feat because they had to get Peter Cushing, I believe, or Cush, not Cush, Peter Cushing. They had to get him, to look exactly how he did in A New Hope. And a little bit after, he was in Revenge of the Sith in that one shot, but it didn't really count. So Disney had to painstakingly do that, and I'm not a visual effects artist, but making faces and having facial animation, because there's a lot of bones and, movements in your mouth when you do this, and there's a lot of things you have to take into effect when you're editing and, making sure that it looks realistic. And, of course, we have Thanos, and we have a bunch of other CGI characters, but really, before any of that, Rogue One kind of perfected it. Before Captain Marvel with Nick Fury and the Irishman, which I didn't see, I don't have Netflix, but, the de-aging process of a lot of these movies and a lot of these actors, I think Tarkin, of course they didn't de-age Tarkin, but having to have a dude sound just like him, for the most part, and then make it look like him is effing awesome. It looks insane, every single time that he's in. And you can tell it's CGI. And by that, I don't mean it's bad CGI when you're like, oh, that's fake. Or you're looking at like a backdrop and you're like, oh, that's a green screen. It's not that kind of bad. It's just, humans like me and you guys, hopefully, we all know what human faces look like. Girl and boy, we know what they look like and all that, so we're used to that. And even though it is CGI, and even though it's damn good CGI, it still is very much apparent that it's CGI. And that's not a negative. Like I said, that's just human recognition. And, the whole Uncanny Valley crap everyone talks about, that really is what it is. But it looks fantastic, by the way. Everything about it, is great. But again, because we're humans, we can tell that it doesn't look right, even though it is right. Of course, Leia in the very end, of course, the very, very end of this film has that Darth Vader scene, which we'll get to in a minute. And it ends literally with Captain Antilles giving Leia the Death Star plans. And he's like, what is this? And she's like, we have hope. And then, of course, the movie ends. And literally right after that, A New Hope begins Episode 4. But Leia's face is the big one. Of course, I believe they got Carrie Fisher's daughter, or someone related to Carrie Fisher, to do that performance. And, of course, they digitally put on a young Carrie Fisher from A New Hope, her face. And this is the one that bugs me. It's a slight negative. but it still isn't that bad. And this is my second baby negative, is that Leia doesn't look as good as Tarkin. Now, I get it. It's only for about 3 seconds or 4 seconds, or maybe 5 at most, of actual screen time compared to Tarkin, who had a lot more. However, just because something is there for a short amount of time does not mean you should spend less time on it. And that is apparent. Leia does not look bad by any means. No, no, no. I'm not saying that. She doesn't look bad. I am saying, though, she doesn't look as good as Tarkin, and in saying that, it very much is not perfect. And you look at it, and you don't go, whoa, what the hell, you know, but it is kind of weird when you go, that's not Leia, you know, and you look at Tarkin, and you go, that's Tarkin, or, you know, that, you know, it's a weird thing. And it really much is like that. You know, I looked at Leia, and I'm like, okay, it looks great, but it just doesn't look as good as Tarkin, you know, and that's my only negative. It's not bad, but it's just not as good, and I get it, it's only there for a few seconds, but still, I do have to talk about it, and it is a slight negative. But it is really cool to see Leia. She sounds like Leia, you know, everything's fine, except that that face is just a little, I don't know, it's a little weird, you know, especially with the human recognition thing that we all have. It just doesn't look like a human face compared to Tarkin as much. Okay, Rogue One ship. This is a big one. Of course, Bodhi nicknames the ship Rogue One so that they can leave, and it's a nice little nod to the name of the film, but it also makes sense in the plot. And a lot of people, whenever you have these kind of lines where they say the name of the film or something, it can get very cheesy and corny. However, this one, I don't think it did that because it works as a line, but it also works within the sense of the story, as in they're rogue, and if you kind of, okay, you say the movie Rogue One, like the ship, but if you say it Rogue One, like, you know, you're the Rogue One, Jin, or you're the Rogue One, you're the Rogue One, you know, the rogue person is in one, not one as in the number one. You know, get what I'm saying? So it works both ways, and that is a pretty cool line, and I really did enjoy it. Going into Hope, of course, Jyn Erso always says, who, I think she's in a new movie with Eddie Redmayne, who is the guy from Fantastic Beasts, Newt Scamander. It was funny, I was like, okay, it goes Rey, number one, in terms of cuteness, and then Jyn, and then Zay from Battlefront 2, and then whatever. It was funny, me and my friends always talk about that. But going back to Jyn as a character, I do think that she is, she's a good character. You know, she's pretty, she's a badass, she knows what she's doing, you know, she's not an idiot. You know, it really is, for girls, and for, you know, I don't want to say like little 3-year-old girls, but, you know, 13 and up, I do think that she's a good role model. Not as good as Rey, but she is a good role model for girls. I think there's a lot of good stuff in there for boys and girls to like. Jyn's a great character. Like I said, you know, all these people like, oh, it's a girl, Force is female. Again, that's all BS. It just happens to be a girl, and, I mean, for God's sake, she dies in the end, so who gives a shizzle? Anyway, going on with that, Jyn Erso always said we have hope, and rebellions are built on hope. And that's exactly what it is. Of course, The Last Jedi is they're out of hope, and they need to get hope, and by the end of the film they do. But this movie is way before that even happens, again, right before New Hope, Episode 4. And really, they're losing hope again. And Jyn's like, look, we're going to get this band of rogue people together on the ship Rogue One. We're going to get the Death Star plans and give hope back. And that's exactly what they do. Yes, everyone dies in this movie. All the heroes, and essentially all the villains. Krennic, everyone dies in this film. And that is a very bold choice. And I do think that it works for the overall story. Because if you kept some of these characters alive, it just raises the question, oh, when's that character returning? Are they going to be in Episode 9, just like Ahsoka Tano, Ezra Bridger, Grand Admiral Thrawn? There's so many Clone Wars and Rebels and Resistance characters that are still alive by the time of Rise of Skywalker, and we're all just like, where the hell are they going to be, you know? And thankfully, I think killing off all these characters is sad, for sure. But by the time they do die, they have hope. They gave hope to the galaxy. They did what they came to do. And it doesn't raise any questions for filmmakers going, oh, how are we going to put, you know, let's say Jyn lived. How are we going to put Jyn and Cassian in that movie? And we do know for a fact that Disney Plus, in about maybe a year or two, is going to be getting a Cassian Andor series, much like the Kenobi series. So if you like Cassian Andor like me, I do think that it's going to be cool to get his own series. Of course, the show is going to take place before this film because he dies in this film, but still it would be pretty cool to see. And of course, that's the hope element. The characters, some good, some forgettable. That's the problem. Because they all die in this film, it's not really, oh, I got to memorize them all, you know, because they all die. And I knew some, but I don't know the one guy, the gun guy, I don't remember his name, Baze or something. They do have memorable names, but because they die, it's not like, oh, you know, Rey. Everyone knows Rey, because she's alive and she's good. Everyone knows Ben Solo and Leia and Chewbacca, and, you know, even Thrawn and Ezra, you know, they're not dead, but they're somewhere. But it is, like I said, when I first saw Rogue One in the theaters in 2016, I was like, I don't know any of these goddamn characters. I don't give a crap. After watching it for, like, critically, I remembered most of them, but some of the names still are forgettable. And that's not really a negative. It's just, me, maybe. You know what I mean? Maybe that's just me, because they all die. It's not like I need to go, oh, that's that character, and that's that character, and, you know, it doesn't really matter, but I don't think they have, and it's not the names, you know, it's really hard to understand. It's not really a negative, it's more of a personal preference, but I do think that maybe they could have been a little, I don't know, maybe it's just me. Okay, next point, everyone dies. Yeah, I just said that, everyone dies, crazy. It's heartfelt, it's sad, but it is ultimately for a good cause. Darth Vader scenes. We have Darth Vader in this film, and it's really, really badass. You see, of course, Anakin Skywalker's head. He's all bald and all that. He's in like this weird cryogenic thing. I didn't even notice it, but there's a Lego set when I was in Disney with my family. And in the Lego store in downtown Disney, they had Darth Vader's castle. And I remember that. I'm like, oh, is that canon? I don't know if that's canon. And this movie had the effing castle, and I almost pooped bricks because I'm like, oh my god, it's the castle. You know, it was really cool. So that was really cool to see, because I haven't really seen Rogue One in a long time. And to be able to watch it, not only critically, but also to watch it just because I'm a huge fan, it makes a lot of sense, and it's really cool to see Darth Vader in there. But his scenes were amazing. This is the first time, if you watch it, you know, 1, 2, 3, blah, 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 if you watch it in that order, this is really the first time you see Darth Vader fight someone in the films. Of course, he fought someone in Jedi Fallen Order, and he fought someone in, you know, Rebels and all that stuff, but live-action movie, this is the first time he uses a lightsaber. And to be honest, Darth Vader is a great, intimidating villain, but I don't feel that he's intimidating in Episode 4, 5, and 6. He's just the villain. I don't look at him and go, oh, he's badass, or oh, he's really scary. He's just Vader, and he's a good villain. That's it. But in Rogue One, he is scary. It's like a horror movie, you know. He ignites his red lightsaber. It's in a few of my tributes, and he just cuts the fudge out of everyone, you know, slicing him and taking a guy and throwing him up like Conjuring style. I mean, it's effed up, and it's really great looking, but this is the first time you see Vader, and you're like, okay, when you're watching it, you know, 1 through 9, and you're like, okay, this guy's really freaking powerful. Anakin's not messing around. And it's really cool to see that when Anakin was a Jedi Knight, he's, you know, flipping and doing all these weird things, and then in Rogue One, and, you know, more or less New Hope and all that, he's more relaxed, because he's older now, of course, but it is still kind of cool to see that, you know, there are different fighting styles, you know, kicking and punching, and lightsaber stance, and this thing, and it's really cool to see. And when everyone biatches that, oh, it looks really corny and cheesy, it's just the way they fight. There's different styles. And Darth Vader was awesome. Of course, Galen, if you're watching my Force Unleashed 2 walkthrough right now, I'll have another episode very, very soon. Essentially, his name is Galen Marek, aka Starkiller, and that game is not canon anymore. However, Starkiller is Starkiller Base, which is the planet Ilum from Jedi Fallen Order, and also, Galen Marek, Starkiller's real name in the game, is Galen Erso, Jyn's father. So they kind of fit Galen and Starkiller in this movie, in one movie and then in The Force Awakens, and it's really, really cool that they did that. Of course, the war scenes, like I said, this is a bit of a war movie. I know it's not real war, but it still is a war movie. It's really nice to see, like I said, all these different action scenes and everything. You know, digging behind cover and shooting and people dying. It's sad, but it's great action, and it really works with Star Wars. And we've never really seen anything like that before when you're watching it, again, in the right order, 1 through 9. Of course, it makes you feel for the characters. It really does. You know, when they die, I feel it. You know, K2SO, all that. And of course, my last point is Disney did it again. Force Awakens was great. I'll get to that review soon, of course. But Rogue One really is the first spin-off, and I love it. Maybe, I don't know if I love it as much as Solo, or maybe, I don't know. I kind of like all this. As a Star Wars film fan, a real fan who doesn't hate everything, I do think they are all tied. Last Jedi is still my favorite, but the most part they're all tied. But all in all, like I said, I love Rogue One, a Star Wars story. It's got great action, great comedy, great you know, action, great writing, great directing. Of course, maybe some of the characters aren't really memorable that much. And of course, Saw Gerrera going, no, or, you know, wait, no, go, you know, that's kind of cheesy there. But other than that, looking at this list, I really don't have that much to hate. If you have a different opinion, that's fine, but I'm going to give Rogue One, a Star Wars story, an A. I loved it. Again, just shy of perfection, I think. It's a great film if you like Star Wars. Of course, I'm assuming most of you have seen it already, because, you know, it's pretty old now. But still, I love Rogue One, a Star Wars story. I can't wait to see what Disney has. Of course, because Solo did so poorly, I don't know if they're going to do any more Star Wars story films, but it still will be pretty cool to see what happens in the future. And again, I really do enjoy Rogue One. Please tell me what you think about Rogue One, a Star Wars story, in the comments. Did you like it? Did you hate it? And what was better, Rogue One or Solo? Thank you guys. May the Force be with you. And next up is Episode 4, New Hope. And we'll see you guys in the next video.